Our reading today is a paraphrase of John 5, verses 1 to 9. Following the busy days of teaching and healing around Galilee, Jesus once again headed south to Jerusalem for one of the annual pilgrimage feasts. A first stop was the pool of Bethesda near the city's sheep gate. Surrounded by 5 covered colonnades, it was famous for the alleged healing powers of the pool water. An ancient legend said that an angel periodically stirred the pool water, and whoever stepped in first was cured of whatever disease the person suffered. The poolside was filled with people who were blind, lame, or paralyzed and hoping to be healed. One of them had been an invalid for 38 years. Touched by his suffering, Jesus asked him a rather obvious question. Do you want to be healed? Rather than directly answering, the disabled man explained, I don't have anyone to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. While I'm trying to get in, someone else always goes ahead of me. Jesus told him, Stand up, pick up your mat and walk. Immediately he was healed and was able to do as Jesus had instructed him. It was a spectacular miracle. Unfortunately, some of the religious leaders were not positively impressed. They accosted the recently healed man and told him, Today is the Sabbath. The law forbids you to carry your mat. He defended himself, passing on responsibility for working on the Sabbath. The man who healed me told me to pick up my mat and walk, he explained. Asking the next obvious question, they inquired who had healed him, who had told him what to do. The man didn't know who the healer was. Whoever had helped him was a stranger who disappeared into the crowd as quickly as he had first showed up at the pool. Well, hello everyone. First of all, apologies for my voice. I have not got COVID, but am definitely suffering with some form of laryngitis, and perhaps it's overuse of my voice. Nonetheless, let me explain what I'm going to do at the family service. And this digital version doesn't allow me to do that. The first thing I want to do is play a game with the young people there, the Sunday school children, called the Lame Game. And I'm quite keen to see how it works. I'll take some volunteers and I will elasticate their ankles together and have them sit down in front of the church. And then I'll put a chocolate across from them, and at my mark I will challenge them to race towards it. They are not allowed to use their legs. The hope, of course, is to replicate some of the desperateness that the lame around the pool of Bethesda from our reading must have felt as they raced without any hope of speed across to a prize. I'm hoping the young people will put a lot of effort into it, and I'm sure that there will be at least one good winner who will be awarded the chocolate. It might be chaos, but I'm going to give it a go. Now, the very idea that the lame and the blind and the otherwise afflicted would gather around and could spend, in this case, up to 38 years trying to be the first into a pool stirred by an angel of God and therefore the only one healed, in my opinion, is not God. I like to measure what I understand of scriptural stories through the lens of Jesus. And so I have to ask, a God of compassion, a God who we know loved his people, I have to ask, would a God of love have people race in some way or other to a winner-takes-all situation where if they get into a pool of bubbling water first, they are healed? The two just don't align for me. I just can't understand in any way, with reference to what I understand about God and about Jesus, I can't understand how it would be possible that a God of love would want people to have to do that. One at a time, first come, first served, unlucky for the rest of you. That is not the God I know. And therefore the story, the very basis of the idea of this pool of healing, Bethesda, contradicts in some way what I believe God to be. And therefore, when I read this story, I think less about the healing powers of the water and more about the fact that everyone there in all these covered areas were staring at the wrong thing. They were distracted, which is why I've decided to call my message today Distracted. Because I think they were distracted from what was real. They were distracted from what God actually was. And in fact, this man, who'd been there for 38 years, nearly missed Jesus because he was staring at a pool that would never heal him. I'm sure you saw it, but there was an experiment that the Washington Post once conducted where they took a world-renowned violinist, Joshua Bell, and asked him to play as a busker in a busy subway station. Joshua Bell played there for most of the morning, and the previous evening had played in a concert where the tickets were $100 a seat. The violin upon which he played was worth millions, and yet no one stopped. People rushed past, ready to catch their trains, making sure that they got to work on time. And so in the video, which is more like a surveillance camera thing than anything, you can see people at high speed moving back and forward. He made a couple of dollars, which he said he was quite proud about. But what was astonishing, and the experiment that eventually won the Pulitzer Prize for journalism, was the fact that people were unable, in the hustle and bustle of their days, to recognize a master at work. They were unable to stop to listen to what would be arguably some of the best violin music they would ever hear, on one of the rarest violins they would ever see. But they rushed past, back and forward, and the surveillance video is sped up to see that every now and again somebody would pause, but for a moment, and then rush on again. Interestingly, only one woman stayed for a long period of time, putting down her bags and watching and listening and enjoying. And afterwards, she speaks to him and said she had been at the concert the night before, so she had recognized both him and the music, which is why she stopped. So I need you to make 3 associations, and perhaps we'll have to use our imagination for this, a little bit of dramatic license. But imagine for a moment that Jesus at the pool of Bethesda, walking amongst the crowd of people staring at a pool, distracted, if you like, by a myth, by an ancient legend that an angel would stir the water. Not for one moment could they possibly break their attention. They should not get distracted by anything else, because if that water started to stir, they had to race to get in. Now jump that across to the commuters on the subways when Joshua Bell was playing the violin. Is it possible that if the music that he was playing could be compared to the presence of God in the pool of Bethesda, is it possible that people missed it because they were distracted by something else? The fear that they would miss their train, the hope that they would not have to wait on the platform any longer than they needed to, the desire to get into the train first in order to secure a comfortable seat or a good handhold. Is it possible that those people in the subway station were very much like the people who needed healing in Bethesda? Perhaps all of them were chasing for some kind of fulfillment. Perhaps all of them were chasing for some kind of wholeness. And then, of course, there's the third leap that we make, and this is the obvious one, to look at ourselves and to ask ourselves, is there a possibility that we are like the people that were commuting on the train that day, or that we were like the people who might have been looking at the wrong thing at a pool like Bethesda? Is it possible that we are so distracted by the goings on of our everyday that we miss the music, we miss the presence of God or Jesus? And so I do have to ask us that, because I think that if there's any central core to this message and to reading this story, then I suppose it is the danger of missing Jesus in our everyday lives, of missing the most beautiful, masterful music, because we're just too busy. We're too busy trying to get ahead. We are too busy trying to be fulfilled, if not self-fulfilled. We are too busy trying to make sure that we are successful, or at least on time. And so we race and we race and we get busier and busier and we moan about it, but we never stop to see that God is all around us. We just need to slow down and be less distracted by ourselves in order to hear him. And perhaps that's why this is important in a family service, to be a message. The reason I like the idea of a family service is because there is the potential where we can gather parents and their children together in some form of worship, which of course we hope to do today. But what is important for me is that sometimes in the rush and distraction, we forget even to teach these things to our children. And so families rush apart. They stare in opposite directions, transfixed by their own pools of healing. And we separate. And so I think that as a family, as not just moms and dads and children here, but as a family, Newton Park Methodist, the people who gather in this place, perhaps it is sometimes important for us to slow down from the distractions of our own life and to look around and to sense together the presence of Jesus. Of course, in the story, there is another form of distraction, and that is this man that is healed is immediately accosted by people who want to interrogate him and find out why he is breaking the law. And I want to say that just briefly, I sometimes think that we are so busy trying to apply the law to each other, the rules of the game, that in some way we miss this miracle that happens on a daily basis in people's lives. And so here we have an extreme example of a man healed after 38 years of lying next to a pool. And the first reaction of the Pharisees, people who are religious by nature, the first thing that they do is they say, "Why are you working on the Sabbath?" And I think that somehow when we're talking about distraction, then I think that even as Christians, we are easily distracted by the rules. And so we spend a lot of time, and you only have to listen to the news to know it, but we spend a lot of time debating what is right and wrong, who is in and out, and who we should accept and what is unacceptable. And yet we are distracted. We are basically staring at the wrong pool, and we are missing the love of Jesus. We are missing the healing power that Jesus makes available to everyone. And that's the point. This man that is healed, he wasn't healed through faith. Jesus didn't say, "Your faith has made you whole." Jesus said to him, "Do you want to be healed?" He said, "Yeah, I would love to, but nobody will help me into the pool." And so for us, this is a perfect example of celebrating the miracle that Jesus can be in everyone's life, rather than deciding what's right and wrong around those parameters. So let's go back to Joshua Bell and to his story. A year and a half after Joshua Bell played in that substation and received almost no applause or attention, he went and performed in a substation again. This time, however, it was publicized, and over 1,500 people stopped and spent what was a considerable amount of time, missing trains even, listening to the beautiful music that he played. It was at that time that I think the perfect parallel can be drawn. Can you imagine if we just slowed down long enough to look for Jesus in the world, to listen to the beautiful music, for example, then can you imagine what a wonderful and glorious miracle it would be if people just missed their trains, broke their gaze from the pool, and looked to Jesus. And so I wonder what would have happened if this had been a more public thing at the pool of Bethesda, if others had looked to Jesus and said, "What a miracle," rather than what I imagine happened was nothing at all. People just continued to stare at the pool. And so Joshua Bell says his only regret in his second concert was that he didn't open his violin case, because he thinks the tips would have been more. But I'd like to conclude with an interesting point, especially because this is a family service and a family message. And that is the one part of the story that I deliberately chose not to tell you yet, was in that first performance that Joshua Bell did, unannounced, where he was largely ignored. I mentioned that there was a woman who stopped because she had recognized him. But there was one other. It was a small child carrying a balloon, and he stopped. He stopped long enough for his mother to come back and try and drag him back towards the train that they were about to miss. And he put up quite a fight because he had recognized something in the music that he couldn't fully understand, but he saw what almost all of the adults had missed. And that mother could not pull him away, or she really had to work hard to do so, because it is the child that heard that music first. And so at a family service, we are blessed to have children. We are blessed to have them as part of our community, because perhaps, just perhaps, they point us to Jesus when we can possibly miss him in the crowd. Thank you.